Well, all right, let's go ahead and get started. Brandon, thank you so much for coming out and talking with us today. We're very excited to hear your perspective on things. I know we're going to be talking about analytics and just the narrative about getting into data science and why it's important to be data literate. So let's open up and can you share a little bit about your background and what you do right now?
Yeah, so one, data literacy is very important, and we'll get into the meat of that later on in the conversation. But just in general, I consider myself first generation everything. First generation in my immediate family to graduate high school, go on to college, and then go on to have a master's in predictive analytics. So that's a major accomplishment within my family in itself. And then right after college, I went on to work at FedEx for a few years, and really that was because I didn't have all the success in the world in my undergraduate career. I graduated with a 2.9. And so at the University of Texas, McCombs School of Business, if you don't have a 3.0, no one's showing you love. So coming off of that 2.9, I graduated and I was working 2 to 3 jobs, FedEx being one of those. And the thing that actually led me into my career is I got tired of looking at boxes. I did work my way up in FedEx to be an operations manager, but it just really wasn't cutting the check in the sense of I just really saw that I was trading my time for money. And that was one of the things that really had me looking into what was a more futuristic job that kind of evolved on its own with the pace of innovation that allowed me to use my brain more so than my body. And so with that in mind, I started researching and I actually stumbled across an article called Data Science 20 Sexiest Job of the 21st Century. A few of the key highlights from that article is that uh, scarcity drives demand. At that point, there was a lot of it, there was ideal of data science. And what data science is all it is solving problems with computers. So don't let anyone overcomplicate or overburden you with a very complex description of what data science is. At the end of the day, you have a problem and you want to solve it in the most efficient way possible. And you're going to do that by using computer language. And so that's one of the things that I learned whenever, after FedEx, I applied to Northwestern University, got in for a master's of predictive analytics. And over the course of 2 years, I was working at a small, not small, they actually sold for around $2 billion, a 3PL, third party logistics company. And so I was actually the first person in the organization that had data science skill sets. So the contrast that I was able to see is that you had very smart individuals who had MBAs, who had masters in statistics, PhDs in statistics, but data science was just a brand new toolbox. And the thing that I've learned in life is that anything is easy with the right tools. And at that point in time, data science was just another perspective on how to solve problems with a more efficient tool belt. And so over 2 years, I implemented a few data science algorithms within that organization. And really, I was the sounding board for the executive team as they became more aware of what data science was and what it had to offer. And once I actually graduated from Northwestern, I went on to a retail company where, for the better part of the last 6 years, I've been working in a retail space to where if you walk into Sally Beauty, Dick's Sporting Goods, uh, Best Buy, I was the person behind the scenes setting the price using demand science and data science. So based on just measuring the relationship between price and quantity. So if you increase the price by 2 cents, are you going to lose quantity or are you going to gain sales? Is the product inelastic or is it relatively elastic? And so with that, I learned a lot just in that space because the thing that I really realized at that point in time is that all of these major big businesses, they were still running off of Excel. And it creates a big opportunity for why we're having this conversation right now, because even though you have a $1 billion company, these $1 billion companies are using predated tools. And right now, data science is a tool that you can really position to have a lot of success and just being more efficient and optimizing towards whatever path that you're seeking. And so that's kind of on the career side of things. I was with the company is called Radionics. I was with them for 6 years. And in the time that I was with them, there was a few things that I wanted to do within the community of data science because I realized that uh, one, I was oftentimes the only black person in my team, let alone in my entire company. But then as I was communicating to my friends and family, hey, I'm a data scientist, no one within my immediate community understood and knew what data science was. But if I asked anyone outside of my community, be it they came from like the Asian community or the Indian community, everyone knew what it was and they were fully tapped in and they were really cashing in on this new career. And so one of the things that I immediately started doing was this thing called Chief Data Talk. I went around to I used the WeWork network, and I did it in probably about 4 or 5 cities where I just would find as many black data scientists as I could. And at that point in time, it was very hard to find a black data scientist. But the goal was to have a panelist of all black data scientists and just speak in layman terms to an everyday audience and educate them on what data science was. I realized after doing that 2 or 3 times that I was just really burning myself out because I wasn't reaching the audience that I really wanted to tap into. And so I ended up creating a data science comic book. And that data science comic book is on Amazon, Data Science Career of the Future, how to earn 100K in any industry. And that 100K, I'm really downplaying the value of data science because you can make a lot more than 100K just because it gives you the ability contract and work outside of your normal employer and to be valuable to where you can land as many contracts as your time permits. And now I'm in a new role as the director of data strategy for an organization that, in my opinion, is poised to be $1 billion organization. It's called Streamlytics. And it's really this company is tapping into the value of data and helping everyday people like you and myself monetize their data assets through. So if you think about it, any application on your phone due to data privacy laws, and I saw we had a talk on data privacy, modern cookieless future. That's very on point and on key for this organization that I'm working with because any application on your phone right now, if you request, say it, be it Amazon or Google or Hulu, if you request your data, they have to give it to you. And so what my company does, we'll pay you for your data. This is something that you've already done. There's little effort on your part, and we're helping you cash in on something that you've already done. So if you have 10 years worth of Netflix history or 5 years worth of Amazon history, we're going to monetize that and license data, basically license your data from you to work with our advertisers. And so in this space, I'm really on the cutting edge of the future and learning a lot of new things within the strategy space. And so that's kind of a 1 minute, 2 minute layout of the land on myself.
That's incredible, man. Thank you for sharing that. I really like the point you were talking about the tools with, entering into data analytics and data science, and really wanting to make sure that that's communicated to certain, demographics because, data science can have such a technical perspective. Like people view data science as being very technical, very mathy, very, difficult to enter. But this comic book, I want to talk a little bit more about that because the goal of this comic book, if I understand correctly, was to make it more accessible to people who may not have had the connection to data science through school or in other ways like that. So can you talk a little bit more about your drive to make data literacy more available to certain demographics, target demographics, and things of that nature?
Yeah, I think it's very valuable right now just to speak to. If you think about, well, we'll take a step back. So the value. Someone asked me a few weeks ago, what is the value of like diversity in the workplace and diversity with respect to data analytics and data literacy? If you think about what a model is, and the model is going to be kind of like the foundation of what data science is. And every day we create mental models, and one mental model that I can give you an example of. And every mental model, the goal with data science is to encode that and program it to make it automated. So an example of a model, something that we're probably within the Black community, we're probably familiar with, is being pulled over. So a cop, as he's sitting on the side of the road, he's looking for inputs. He's looking for clues that will dictate whether or not he's able to predict whether or not someone is a drunk driver. So are your lights off? Are you driving erratically? Are you swerving? So that there's probably like a checklist of 4 or 5 things that he's looking for that gives him an indication of whether or not he should spend his time on pulling you over to pull you over for the sake, for public safety. So in the same way that he has this mental model, the same way that a computer right now, one of the things that the comic actually touches on is predictive policing. Well, the value of working within our community, there's a thing called inherent bias. And so if you think about the bias that people who don't look like myself, who are building algorithms, let's just say another example that I can give you, my community was riddled with payday loan and cash and carry, payday loans, cash and carry, like for the underbanked communities and liquor stores. Well, there's someone now behind the scenes running some type of demand science, looking at where's the most optimal place to place a store. Well, but if they don't come from the communities where they're placing these stores, they don't actually see the damage that's happening from this optimal equation that an analyst behind a closed door actually produced. So the value in uh, bridging the gap from an education perspective on what data science is and data literacy is the fact that we play a very important role of being that counterbalance of understanding what are the edge cases or what are the blind spots that individuals who aren't from our communities they're actually programming into these applications that can come back and hurt us and do harm. And so my goal in anything that I do is do no harm. And so that's a perspective that every individual should take within data science. But if you have people who don't come from specific backgrounds or only have a very limited lens on the actual utility or the application of the thing that they're creating, oftentimes they can create, a very negative downside. And so being that balance with place and bringing ourselves and coding our experience into the next generation of algorithms that are meant to make our lives more easy and more efficient, I think is very important. And to your point, you mentioned about like the complexity of data science. Admittedly, when I started, 6 years ago, it was a very complex field. You had to learn, programming. You had to know statistics. You had to know you had to know a lot. But the thing about it is that it's changing. The landscape within data science is changing toward data literacy is more important than the actual technical know-how of programming an algorithm. And so you'll hear a concept called a analytic translator. So these are people who actually understand the demand science, they understand the models, they understand the assumptions that go along with the models, and they're able to interpret it and add value in the workplace. Now, those people are just as valuable as the data scientists, because you'll see that most data scientists they come from backgrounds where English isn't their first language. So in the business world, it's very rare to find someone who understands data science and knows how to speak the language and tell a compelling story uh, with data. And so I think that even though there may be a learning curve in terms of if you wanted to jump into data science today and be hands-on with it, yes, fundamentally you will have to learn how to program. But I would say in the next 2 to 5 years, that's going to be less important because you have major companies embedding AI into the software themselves.
I really like how you pointed out the language behind data and just the general business acumen that comes with, being aware of the data language. I know there's a lot of organizations, like you said, that really place heavy emphasis on, do you understand how to build this story from the data? And storytelling is something that's very crucial, especially as we talk about more Black professionals getting into this space, as you were talking about why it's important for Black professionals to be data scientists. And I think that's definitely a good topic for right now too with Black History Month. We've been playing around with the idea of Black Future Month because
Mhm.
we understand that a lot of Black professionals, as they're entering into these fields and making more impact, they're setting the groundwork for, the future of data for various communities. And I think that's something that's so crucial and something that's really awesome about this comic book that you've created. For everybody who's listening right now, the comic book is available on Amazon. We'll definitely put the link in the chat. And it's the first data science comic book too on Amazon. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the first. I wanted to be creative, and I understanding my audience. I know that we're very looking at myself. I have a very short attention span, so I wanted something that was interesting, that was creative, and that was artistic, to where it would be talked about. And so when I wrote it, I actually, one of the things, when people hear comic, they're like, oh, it's a kid's book. But the thing that I did, I actually wrote it for my age group. I wrote it for all the uncles and aunts and, who have nieces and nephews and who have kids right now, because the language is a little bit higher than, I would say high school and beyond. It would be the actual, individuals who could sit and digest the information. But the purpose of it, I wanted to educate my, I guess you could say, age group, so that we could be able to just tell, someone who's coming after us, hey, you may want to look into data science because X, Y, and Z, and to be able to give an example of what, data science was. Because one of the things in the comic book, it gives a very artistic depiction of the type of algorithms. And anytime you hear the word algorithm, think of it just as a process, A, B,
Right.
C. If this, or an if then statement. So don't let people talk over your head whenever always ask for clarity if you don't understand something. But if you ever hear algorithm, it's just an if then statement. But on one of the pages, an example is facial recognition. That's a classification analysis. So every day that you pick up your cell phone, it looks at your face and it says, is this Brandon or is this not? But each time you pick it up, it trains. It learns your face over time, because your face changes over time. So it's constantly learning. And so you're tapping into data science every single day, but people aren't aware of that. And then if you think about like political elections, clustering analysis, being able to identify whether or not, based on certain searches in someone's history, whether or not they're going to vote Republican or Democrat. These are things that are, are used on a daily basis, and we're not aware of it. And then like anomaly detection. When's the last time when you've received a message from your Chase? Hey, this is an abnormal purchase. Is this you? Yes or no? So we're on a daily basis. Our lives are being simplified and made more efficient through the use of data science. So it's very important that we should just be aware of it enough to say, okay, this is cool. And now that I know a little bit about it, I may not want to be a data scientist myself, but I know I can tell someone else about it. And I know that, from the outside looking in, if you take me, for example, it's data science has changed my life. It has given me the ability to work anywhere in the world that I want to. I have more than 5 contracts between companies, and I have my main job. And so the thing that I tell people today is that you can be the neighborhood mechanic of data science. So think about, everyone has an uncle who, he didn't go to school to be a certified mechanic, but this may change now, the technology, and this is a very important point in the book, is that technology is forcing out some of the older jobs, but still keeping in line with that metaphor. We do have, with the pace of all of the boot camps that are available to teach you data science skills, you have the ability to do something that I didn't do. I had to pay $60,000 for my degree.
Mhm.
Right now, you can invest $15,000, and that $15,000, and I would say a 18 month to a 2 year period can garnish $100,000 plus salary. I think that's a worthwhile investment.
Right. And it sounds as if too, like in data science specifically, it's definitely more skills based than degree based. I know for a period of time there is such a heavy tie to having a degree and having that piece of documentation. But now, you would agree, right, that it's more technical, like as long as you can do the skills and you have that awareness, you can enter into that field.
Exactly. I think of the song "No Ceilings." Honestly, I really feel like within data science, you are your only ceiling. You
Right.
know, just because we're in a distributed world, you have COVID, which has forced everyone to rethink their business models to where more people are working remote. So there's less of an opportunity for someone to judge you based off of your skin color, to judge you based off of the way that you talk, but they have to judge you based on the quality of your work. And so the quality of your work, excuse my language, shits on everyone else, and you're more efficient and you're consistent, and you're reliable in your ability to solve a problem. You are your only, I guess, you're the only ceiling, and that's the one thing that I really enjoy and I appreciate about data science.
Right. That's awesome. Well, I'm gonna turn it over to our audience and see if anybody has any questions for you. If you request, I can bring you up on stage and we can ask some questions to Brandon while we have him here. Does anyone have any questions to share? Hey, Dom.
Hey, I got a question. So I guess I'll start with how has the comic served in bringing in more people into the space, Brandon? Like I imagine you've garnered some mentees since starting this initiative.
You know, that's a phenomenal question. So the comic, at the point of when I released it, it was a little taboo because I was actually working for an organization that felt like they owned everything that I did. And so I didn't put out the public service announcement, and I did this like 2 years ago. I only reached out to my immediate community, and I went to a few like NESB meetings and passed them out and things of that nature. So the comic in itself hasn't served the purpose that I initially intended it to. But at this point, I'm actually going to spend a little bit of time and resources on getting the message out because, in essence, it's a timeless piece of work. Because data science, career of the future, it is still the career of the future, albeit I will say that, cybersecurity, data engineering, and being a Web3 developer, those are more futuristic in the sense of, in the context of, the broader conversation. But no, I don't think that the comic has reached the audience that I needed to reach, just for the simple fact that whenever I published it, I was worried about my boss, and now I'm in a place where I don't have to worry about that anymore. So you'll see more of me just putting it out there for people to pick it up.
Yeah, that's dope, man. I could think of some programs that can use quite a bit of those too. When I think about like STEM in the Park, which was founded by Noble over at the Dallas Millennial Club,
Mhm.
these type of initiatives can use those in their like their bags and their goodie bags and all type of stuff. So yeah, let's connect on it.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you, Dom, for that. Does anyone else have any questions? Brandon, I'm curious to know, do you see yourself writing more comic books or more content tailored to reaching, audiences that want to be, entering into the space? Like, is there a roadmap for more content that we can keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I think so. And it may be a little less technical. I'm still trying to decide on what approach that I want to take. Do I want to break down the ecosystem of data science and speak to all the individual roles? As I mentioned, data engineering, in my opinion, with the concept of big data is actually, in my opinion, is more relevant for me today than it was whenever I initially published it because I was solely in a data science capacity. But I think it's important the way that I've structured the information. There's a few other things that I would like to speak to. For example, earlier when we talked about being the counterbalance of of inherent or design bias, there's a way that there's a whole message behind that. And then the ideal of within the Black community, competition and survival is it's kind of been bred into our DNA. And so being able to highlight that fact and say that, okay, these are the traits, competition and survival, those are the primary traits that make a successful business. So in the sense of being, Black in corporate America, we're the individuals who are going to who we're used to making decisions in a place of scarcity. So we have to be able to think outside of the box from a creative perspective. And then we're also efficient utilizers of these scarce resources. So that's another message, just from a what would you call those type of books? Self help. I do think that there is an avenue to just empower people to be more confident and aware that all of the negative connotations and all of the negative things that people try to put on you, those are actually, they can be turned into something positive, and you should be proud of the fact that you are a creative and out of the box thinker.
I think that's very important content for people to be able to read and to learn more about. It sounds like there's some awesome, exciting stuff that's on the horizon. But Brandon, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to see more and excited to connect with you more in the community. Thank you so much for talking with us about data and data literacy. And we will wrap this up, and thank you again.
Okay. And if anyone has any questions for me, I'm always available. Just hit me up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Everyone have a good Friday.
All right.